You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. When we talk about motivation in the context of cyber attacks, we are pointing to the underlying reason that drives someone to launch or participate in a malicious activity. Motivation explains the why behind an attack, just as a detective seeks the motive when investigating a crime. Understanding this factor is critical because the same technical exploit could be used for very different ends depending on what the attacker wants to achieve. A password theft, for instance, may be leveraged to steal money, to embarrass a rival, or to infiltrate a government system. Motivation becomes the compass pointing us toward the larger purpose behind the activity. Motivation is important because it influences every other aspect of the attacker's behavior. It helps determine how much effort they are willing to invest, how long they will sustain their campaign, and what kinds of targets they will pursue. An attacker driven purely by curiosity might poke at vulnerabilities but give up quickly, while one motivated by financial gain will persist until profit is extracted. From a defensive perspective, motivation is what makes one event stand out from background noise. It gives meaning to patterns of activity and helps analysts prioritize threats. If we step back, motivation in cyber attacks mirrors the motivations seen in traditional crime or even warfare. Humans act from desire, belief, fear, or opportunity, and technology simply provides a modern stage for those impulses. Just as someone might rob a bank for money or sabotage a rival's business for revenge, cyber attackers operate with their own set of rationales. By framing attacks through this human-centered lens, defenders avoid seeing threats as just streams of technical data. Instead, they recognize them as purposeful actions, which makes anticipating and countering them more achievable. To make sense of the wide variety of possible attacker motives, security professionals often group them into common categories. The most frequently cited are financial, political, ideological, and personal. These categories serve as shorthand for describing very different types of threat actors and the operations they carry out. A financially motivated attacker might be a cybercriminal group using ransomware, while a politically motivated one could be a state-backed espionage team stealing diplomatic cables. Ideological actors are often labeled hacktivists, and personal motives cover everything from disgruntled insiders to thrill-seeking hobbyists. While not exhaustive, these categories help structure our analysis. These categories matter because they highlight how diverse the threat landscape is. A bank may face attacks from financially driven criminals looking to cash out quickly, while also being targeted by a nation-state actor interested in monitoring transactions for intelligence purposes. A government website might be defaced by hacktivists trying to make a statement, while an insider could compromise data simply to prove a point. Each of these categories involves different goals, timelines, and levels of persistence. Grouping motivations makes it easier for defenders to anticipate the types of attacks most likely to be directed at their organization. It's also useful to realize that categories are simplifications. Real-world attackers do not always fit neatly into one box, and motivations can overlap or shift over time. A hacktivist might begin with ideological goals but later profit from selling stolen data. A state-backed espionage group could fund its long-term operations with financially motivated crimes. Understanding categories is like learning the primary colors. They provide a foundation, but in practice, attackers often mix them. That blending is precisely what makes motivation analysis challenging, and why it must be approached with nuance and flexibility rather than rigid definitions. Financial motivation is perhaps the most visible and widespread driver of cyber attacks today. It includes direct theft, where criminals steal money through fraudulent transfers or payment card fraud, as well as schemes like ransomware that extort victims into paying for access or recovery. It also covers fraud operations, such as phishing campaigns designed to trick users into giving up credentials or personal data that can be monetized. Beyond these direct methods, financial motivation also includes resale, Stolen data like medical records, intellectual property, or login credentials often finds a lucrative market on underground forums. The prominence of financial motivation is easy to understand. Technology has created enormous opportunities for wealth transfer with relatively low barriers to entry. Criminal groups can scale their operations globally, reaching thousands of potential victims without leaving their home country. Moreover, digital crime often carries a perception of lower risk compared to physical robbery. For example, a cybercriminal in Eastern Europe can target a victim in North America without ever crossing a border, making arrest and prosecution far less likely. This dynamic explains why financial crime has become the backbone of much cyber activity. For defenders, recognizing financial motivation provides clarity on what attackers want and how they operate. Knowing that criminals aim to monetize data, security teams can anticipate that customer information, payment systems, and business continuity are likely targets. Controls such as transaction monitoring, fraud detection, and ransomware preparedness take on special significance when framed against this motivation. The lesson here is that financial motive is not abstract. It directly translates into the assets most at risk. By linking motivation to tangible targets, defenders can prioritize safeguards that blunt the most profitable attack paths. These motivations are not limited to traditional espionage between rival states. In recent years, politically motivated cyber activity has also targeted private companies, universities, and even nonprofit organizations. For example, think tanks may be compromised because their research influences policy decisions, or corporations may be infiltrated to gain trade secrets that benefit a national economy. In this way, political motivation casts a wide net, expanding the definition of strategic interest to include economic, military, and diplomatic domains. The victims may not even realize they are of interest until after the compromise has occurred. From the defender's perspective, political and espionage motivations present unique challenges. Unlike financial criminals, who often reveal themselves quickly by demanding ransom or cashing out stolen goods, politically motivated attackers prefer to remain hidden. Their goal is ongoing access, which allows continuous monitoring and data collection. This means defenders may face an adversary willing to invest heavily in stealth, custom tools, and patient reconnaissance. Understanding that motivation prepares defenders to expect a different kind of adversary, one whose persistence, resources, and objectives require equally strategic countermeasures, such as long-term monitoring and layered defenses. Ideological motivations bring yet another dimension. Often embodied by hacktivist groups, ideological attackers are driven by beliefs, causes, or social movements. Their operations are usually public-facing, seeking visibility rather than secrecy. Common objectives include defacing websites, leaking information to embarrass organizations, or launching denial-of-service attacks to disrupt services. Unlike espionage, which thrives on stealth, or financial crime, which pursues profit, ideological operations often aim to make a statement. They are closer to digital protest than covert espionage, though the technical means can be equally disruptive. What makes ideological motivation interesting is its strong link to symbolism. Targets are often chosen not for their inherent value, but for what they represent. A government website might be attacked to protest policies, or a corporate portal might be taken offline to criticize perceived injustices. In this sense, hacktivism is about shaping narratives and drawing attention to causes. For defenders, this motivation underscores the importance of public relations and reputation management alongside technical security. An attack that generates headlines can damage trust even if the technical impact is relatively minor. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Financial motivations are not only widespread, but have also reshaped the attacker ecosystem by driving the commoditization of tools. Instead of each attacker building custom exploits from scratch, markets now exist where malware, ransomware kits, and phishing frameworks can be purchased off the shelf. This mirrors legitimate economies. Just as businesses outsource or buy components to save time, criminals rely on toolkits created by specialists. As a result, even less skilled attackers can launch campaigns with relative ease. The financial incentive behind selling these tools means they are continuously updated, advertised on underground forums, and bundled with support services. This commoditization creates an environment where the barrier to entry is much lower than it once was. In earlier decades, attackers required deep technical knowledge to craft their own viruses or intrusion methods. Today, someone with only modest understanding can buy or rent access to botnets, ransomware-as-a-service platforms, or exploit kits. The profit motive ensures a supply of these products, and demand from aspiring criminals keeps the cycle running. In essence, financial motivation has industrialized cybercrime, transforming it from scattered individual activity into a global marketplace that mirrors software-as-a-service models. For defenders, this means financial motivation expands the pool of potential adversaries. Not every attacker is highly skilled, yet they may still wield dangerous capabilities because someone else has monetized the technical complexity. Defenders cannot simply assume that sophisticated attacks come only from advanced adversaries. Even a novice could inflict serious harm using purchased tools. Recognizing that financial incentives drive this commoditization helps organizations prepare for a landscape where attacks are more frequent, more varied, and more accessible than ever before. Political goals, on the other hand, rarely rely on commoditized kits. These operations often require long-term reconnaissance, persistence, and custom tooling tailored to specific environments. A nation-state actor attempting to exfiltrate military blueprints or diplomatic communications cannot afford to be discovered quickly. Reconnaissance becomes their most valuable phase, sometimes lasting months or years. They map networks, observe behaviors, and carefully choose the timing of their attacks to coincide with geopolitical events. Unlike financially motivated actors who move quickly to extract value, political attackers move deliberately and with patience. This deliberate approach has practical implications. Attackers motivated by political objectives often design their operations to blend seamlessly into normal traffic. They may compromise supply chains to insert malicious code far upstream, allowing access that persists undetected for years. Reconnaissance ensures that once they act, the effect is maximized. Whether it is stealing trade secrets, monitoring communications, or disrupting infrastructure during a crisis. Such campaigns are less about one-time profit and more about accumulating influence, leverage, and control. The long-term nature makes them particularly difficult for defenders to counter. For defenders, awareness of this motivation means anticipating an adversary that is not easily deterred. Financial criminals may abandon a target if defenses make the effort unprofitable, but political actors may persist regardless of cost because their goals are strategic. That persistence demands equally long-term defensive investments, such as continuous monitoring, advanced anomaly detection, and active threat hunting. The defender's challenge is to recognize reconnaissance activity before it matures into a damaging breach. Understanding the political motivation behind the threat makes this anticipation more realistic and focused. Ideological campaigns stand apart from both financial and political motivations by their emphasis on public-facing disruption. These campaigns seek to draw attention, generate publicity, or spread a message. Because of this, their tactics often prioritize visibility over stealth. Defacing websites, launching distributed denial-of-service attacks, or leaking sensitive documents are all means to achieve symbolic impact. The goal is not financial gain or strategic espionage, but to amplify a cause or belief, often in ways designed to capture headlines and social media attention. The public nature of ideological attacks means that their success is often measured not by the technical damage inflicted, but by the visibility achieved. For example, taking down a government website for a few hours may have little operational impact, but if the attack trends on social media, the attackers consider it a victory. This focus on attention makes ideological campaigns unpredictable. Timing may align with protests, political anniversaries, or cultural flashpoints rather than with technical opportunities. In some cases, the attack itself is less damaging than the reputational fallout. For defenders, ideological motivation highlights the importance of resilience and communication. While technical defenses against denial of service or defacement are important, so too is the ability to respond publicly and restore confidence quickly. Organizations must prepare not only for the technical restoration of services but also for the messaging that follows. Acknowledging the symbolic dimension of these attacks ensures that defensive planning accounts for reputational harm, not just system downtime. In many ways, responding to an ideological attack is as much a public relations exercise as a cybersecurity one. Personal motives provide another dimension, often overlooked because they appear less structured. These include revenge by disgruntled employees, curiosity-driven exploration by insiders, or the pursuit of notoriety by individuals who want recognition within certain communities. While these may not involve the scale of state actors or the economic drive of criminal groups, personal motivations can still lead to significant damage. Insider misuse, for example, often causes losses greater than many external attacks, simply because insiders already possess trust and access. What distinguishes personal motivation is its intimate connection to human behavior. Unlike external actors, insiders often act out of emotion, anger at being passed over for promotion, frustration at organizational decisions, or the thrill of testing boundaries. These motives may not align with rational cost-benefit calculations, which makes them harder to predict. A single individual acting out of revenge may exfiltrate sensitive data, delete critical files, or sabotage systems without any broader financial or political agenda. The damage is still very real, and sometimes even greater because it bypasses normal external defenses. For defenders, acknowledging personal motivations underscores the importance of monitoring insider activity, enforcing least privilege, and fostering a culture where grievances can be addressed before they turn destructive. It also illustrates that not all threats come from faceless outsiders. Some of the most challenging attacks originate from within, driven by human emotions and personal conflicts. Recognizing this helps broaden defensive strategies beyond purely technical controls to include behavioral monitoring, HR collaboration, and employee support systems. Motivations also shape target selection and timing. A financially motivated attacker may choose targets that promise quick monetary gain, such as e-commerce sites during holiday sales. A politically motivated group may time their campaign to coincide with international summits. Hacktivists might strike on symbolic dates tied to their cause. Personal attackers may act immediately after a triggering event, like a demotion or termination. In each case, motivation provides the logic behind why an attack happened when and where it did. Understanding this logic allows defenders to anticipate and prepare for moments of higher risk. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.